the Open over the weekend, won by Brian Harman, and our Open coverage is brought to you by the all-new Renault Austral E-Tech. Full hybrid, has 200 horsepower and a range of up to 1,100 kilometres, no less. Lawrence Donegan is on the line. Hello.
How are you doing there, Joe?
So, Brian Harman, we waited and we waited and we waited, and he never succumbed to the pressure, which, even though people have used the word boring about the tournament, and I appreciate that, I may have used it myself, Lawrence, on the couch once or twice, one has to admire the performance of Brian Harman. This was very special.
Yeah, it was brilliant. I mean, everybody's going on about his putting, but we all talk about Rory's driving. Brian Harman's driving, he doesn't hit it very far, so the stats themselves, the strokes gained stats that everybody uses these days, won't sort of suggest that he dominated off the tee, but he barely missed a fairway, and he had a good 20-30 yards longer than most of the guys he was playing with. But he's a great ball striker, and you ally that, I mean, he had the putt week of his life. If you look at his career, he's a good, decent putter, but he's not Ben Crenshaw by any stretch, but what's the stat that everybody's throwing around? One putt under 10 foot he missed all week. He only holds, I think it was 16 or 17 between 5 and 10 foot. So the vast majority of those putts are tap-ins, but nevertheless, that speaks to his good lag putting. Yeah, utterly dominant. It reminded me a bit of Louis Oosthuizen at St Andrews in 2010. Everybody thought, we can reel him in, but he's just too good. And he was just having a great week, one of the best weeks of his life, and a really worthy winner. No caveats, he can't complain about the draw, can't complain about the setup. It wasn't a funky golf course. It was a very, very fair golf course, great golf course actually, Joe. So yeah, you got to tip your hat to Brian Harman, but I'd put my money on that being his one and only major championship.
Yeah. Not
to say it was a fluke, but he doesn't look like a guy who's going to go out and dominate at the Masters, or he just doesn't have the game for that. He's got a pretty decent record at the Open. I think he finished 6th or something last year at St Andrews. So yeah, he's a very worthy winner.
Yeah, and had a decent Scottish Open. So with his driving distance, he needs to be rewarded by those bouncy fairways and let that ball run on. That's really, they're one of the few arenas in which he can compete. And that's no bad thing that the Open throws up these kind of winners as well. Like the big boys need manners put on them at times.
Yeah, but again, you're by no means you're going to disparage the guy, but you look at the list of winners, we talked about it last week, the list of winners at Royal Liverpool, Bobby Jones, Tiger, Rory, Brian Harman.
I know. I did see a Justin Ray stat, and it was Americans who've won the Open by 6 shots or more, and it's Bobby Jones, Walter Hagen, Arnold Palmer, Johnny Miller, Tiger Woods, Brian Harman. It kind of ruins that stat.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's the level of his play. The other great stat is he won the US Junior Am. I think there's 4 players that have won the US Junior Am and the Open Championship in history. And it's, Johnny Miller, Johnny Miller, Tiger Woods, Jack Nicklaus, and Brian Harman. So, yeah. I mean, this guy is no mug. He's no mug. He played twice in the Walker Cup. Played in the 2005 team, in the 2019 the US won both times.
Yeah.
Won the US Junior Amateur. Was a dominant player in that world, junior golf world in America, where Justin Thomas and Jordan Spieth came through. So again, it's just amazing. I mean, a great week. Yeah, I really really don't want to disparage the guy, but it's not. He turned the brightness down on the spectacle, you'd have to say, with his brilliance.
He sure did. I hadn't realised about Harman, by the way, that he was an absolute wonder kid and won everything all around him. I didn't know that until this week. But again, as you say, it's not like he's this isn't Ben Curtis territory. He was 29th in the world, had been on tour for 15, 16 years, is now like 10th in the world on the basis of having won the Open. So he was more than a very reasonable player. Just, I suppose, allied to his dominance, he's not somebody that screams charisma on a golf course. There was something magical about watching Tiger Woods or even Rory McIlroy put a field to the sword and dominating, whereas with Harman, he can't quite carry that either. So I suspect the TV audience more than checked out somewhere around 4 o'clock in the afternoon.
Yeah, the other thing as well, with some players, you look at them, let's take Tom Kim, for example, the 21-year-old kid. You could just see that, he plays with sheer joy and passion, and, and Rory's a bit like that as well. And you can watch them, and you can obviously admire the the aesthetics of the golf swings or whatever, but that kind of drive and passion and just love of it, it's written in their faces. Harman's just, he's not a PGA Tour drone by no stretch. But again, it was all kind of laid onto layer upon layer of just. I felt really bad for him, actually. The people in the crowds, heckling him at the start. It's not his fault. He's playing brilliantly, and the Tommy Fleetwood couldn't close it out. But yeah, as I say, he'll probably go down as a one major championship winner, not a fluke winner. No. But again, out of that, Zach Johnson obviously won a Masters as well. But out of that kind of. That's a kind of cut of him. Still.
Well, I'll remind you of the behaviour of the British crowd next year if we're talking about how in advance how great it is to be back at the Open and you don't have all the idiots in America there, because I don't know, they're starting to head in a certain direction.
Joe, there's a new audience in golf, and it's not us. You and I, we have our baseball caps on, the correct way, with the bill out front. But there's a new audience. And when you go to any golf course, certainly in the United States, and it's all, it's baseball caps backwards, and it's yabba booey, and mashed potato, and all. I don't know. There were some weird shouts this week at Liverpool at Hoylake, but it's just again. You can sit here and be an old fuddy-duddy and complain about it, but that's just the kind of nature of the kind of modern kind of audiences now, crowds, but it's not, it's not particularly edifying, certainly for me. I'm a bit of an old traditionalist, but I mean, that's where we're at now. It's a foreplay pod, and it's, I don't want to throw in the no laying up crowd with that, but there's a bit of that there as well.
Do you know what's funny about the no laying up crowd is, and I listen to that podcast and I think it's been great for golf, and I love their in-jokes and I love their interaction, but like what salvages maybe the more frat boy element, as you might kind of term it, is that they have like a really sincere love for the game and the tradition of the game, and like that's the I find it very funny, but even if you didn't find it funny, like there's that redeeming element that they really care about the game and they get the game, whereas honestly I think they have a bunch of imitators going to tournaments who are just like wannabe frat boys, and there's almost a degree at the Open of like oh, this is how they do it in America, so maybe certain younger people think, oh, let's do it ourselves. And honestly, when someone shouted beans and toast after one drive, I thought, like, there's nothing great about that. What you guys had going was great. Don't become like a poor imitation of the States here.
Yeah, I know. It's again, do you want to get into this sociological changes in developed Western societies, Joe? Probably not, but it's everywhere. I mean, I've lived in the States for well on 15 years now, and it's quite astonishing to me. The whole frat boy thing. It turns out that the high school, the movies about American high schools are actually right. I mean, there really is these cultures. There's the sorority culture. There's the frat boy culture. I think, again, not to get too deeply into this, but societal changes in the States over the last 8 years, since who came along, there's a kind of coarseness has evolved a little bit, and I think it's spreading, and I mean who is kind of metastasizing into the world of golf, certainly in golf over here in the States, but and apparently now in the august grounds of Royal Liverpool was a bit of a shame. Hopefully, as Royal Troon next year, I'm not sure there'll be much of that around Royal Troon.
One last point to make on Harman, and it's to his immense credit, almost in opposition to Rory, who started those rounds so brilliantly. We'll come on to him in a second, but Harman started both his Saturday and his Sunday rounds in distinctly wobbly fashion with 2 bogeys each time, and both times all of us said, oh, here it comes, here's the crunch, and he recovered both times. That doesn't always happen. In fact, I'd say, Lawrence, all your years watching golf, when that slide starts, that's hard to reverse.
It really is, especially in that moment, in these big occasions. I don't know about you, Joe, but when he bogeyed those early bogeys, I got a slew of texts. Oh, here it comes. Yeah. He's crumbling. But again, I'm no different from anybody else. We really knock entirely aware of the kind of player he is. I mean, he's a short guy. I'm not saying he's got small man syndrome or anything, but he is, the post-victory moments, people talking about him, just saying how much, certainly Zach Johnson, the US Ryder Cup captain, was talking about just how much of a, he's, they call it a dog. He does not, if he gets his jaws into something, he's very, very reluctant to give up. He's a really, really good match play player, as he's shown through the years. I think, again, not that we underestimate him, we probably just didn't know Brian Harman. You're dead right to highlight that. It was really, really good, especially in that atmosphere where he knew the galleries were dying for him to collapse or to fail. Again, he spoke to that in his post-victory press conference about how some guys said to him, "You don't have the stones for this, Harman." Well, guess what? That set him going. Again, just another element of just a fantastic performance from him.
Yeah. So without him, we had a hell of a tournament, because we would have had 4 players tied for 7 under, and then Emiliano Grillo and McIlroy on 6 under. So everybody else was so tightly bunched. It further serves to highlight how well Harman played. What a strange tournament for McIlroy. I must say, I don't know about you, I suspect anybody watching Saturday and Sunday, the first 5, 6, 7 holes of each round, and you see the way he strikes the ball, it is exhilarating if you're a golf fan. And then, man, if I could go and break the putter for him, I would, Lawrence. It's such a serious problem for him at majors.
Yeah, well, just you break the first 9 holes on Saturday is probably the best I've ever seen. Yeah. It was utterly magnificent. He played it in 3 under par, should have been 6 or 7 under. He didn't miss a shot, 9 greens out of 9. It was just fantastic. The chances that he missed, very reminiscent actually of the Scottish Open the week before. Earlier in the week he played it. I think he shot 64 one day. It could have been 58. But a part of it is, he creates so many chances. He has so many more chances than most everybody else, and all we kind of see are some putts going in, but putt after putt missing, and it dispirits us. Goodness knows what it has to do to McIlroy psychologically. I mean, it's happening. It doesn't happen all the time. I mean, we're talking about a guy here who's won, I think, 37 times on the PGA Tour or 40 times around the world or whatever. So he wins. He's not a complete loser. But, in these big moments, it must be just because you miss a putt and you've got to get yourself up for the next one, and you miss the next one. And it's really, really damning, especially, as I say, you're right to highlight it, Joe, Saturday morning, Sunday morning. Again, my texts are blowing up. He was 3 under par after 6 on Sunday morning. Here he comes. And you could see it on Saturday, Joe. The front 9 was utterly magnificent. Gets to the back 9, not where he thinks he should be, and he misses the next 3 greens. I think he plays them a 1 over par. And there you go. All the momentum's gone. Is it becoming a problem? Actually, I looked this up. I think his strokes gained for the week was, I think, just over almost a +1, so decent enough. He wouldn't have won. He lost to Brian Harman by 7. So he lost to Brian Harman on the greens by 11 shots. So, if he'd putted at all decently, he would have beaten Brian Harman. But the point is, he wouldn't have beaten John Ram, Sepp Straka, or Jason Day. So it wasn't all his putting. We just got the sense that it was all about the putting. It wasn't his best week. Balls overall over 72 holes. He's certainly struck the ball a bit better. I mean, he's certainly driven the ball a little bit better, but it does come down to the putting. And I guess again, I hesitate to use the word failure, but disappointment lays upon disappointment, and eventually it just kind of gets to you, because you can't keep hitting towering 4 irons to 8 feet. You just can't. It's impossible. Nobody ever could, and miss a putt. You got to take these chances. Because Harrington, a great quote from Harrington this week. He was saying, it's a bit more complicated than just holding a few putts, because there's a lot of great players out there now. The standard, again, we talked about this last week. The standard is just getting so good, and you've got to, you've got to be on your game, ball striking in majors, but you've obviously got to hold a few putts. And Harrington said that I noticed that Rory's down alongside me in the putting stats, and believe you me, that's a miserable place.
Yeah.
again, we'll have to ask the question. I mean, Rory was asked. He was saying, "I'm looking ahead. I'm going to try and win the FedEx Cup. I'm going to try and do, play in the Ryder Cup, win a Ryder Cup." But surely the point has to come where he might have to have a look at this. And if you look at his history of they really want to talk about putting coaches. You look at his history of putting coaches, though. He hired Dave Stockton in 2011, stayed with him to 2015. Won 4 major championships in that period.
What happened? What happened there? Do we think? Obviously, he's working with Brad Faxon now, and Faxon seems like very erudite, smart, personable, knowledgeable putting coach. But what happened with Stockton? I wonder.
Well, Stockton, I think part of it was geographical. Stockton's an older guy now, and he's reluctant to travel, obviously, on tour. He lives in Southern California. It's a long way from where I think it's as simple as that.
Might be worth a trip in the old private jet, Lawrence,
Well, again, who are you and I to tell Rory McIlroy what to do? I'm not saying you should go to Dave Stockton, but I'm just saying the rhythm of his putting career as a pro. He stuck with Stockton for 4 years. He moved to Phil Kenyon for 3 years. He's been with Faxon 5 years.
Yeah.
He first started working with Faxon in 2018. And I don't know about you or anybody else listening to this, Joe, but when I hear Brad Faxon talking about putting and the way he coaches or teaches Rory or talks to Rory about putting, it's all a bit holistic, and
yes,
I don't really get it. I don't quite understand it. I consider myself to be fairly knowledgeable. It all sounds a bit, Anthony Robbins and all that. It's all about you got to be instinctive about it. I'm not so sure. I mean, Rory spoke again about a technical issue. That he had a slight technical issue with his putting, and he's aware of it and he's thinking about it. Well, if he's got technical issues with his putting stroke, he should really get down. I mean, if you look at Phil Kenyon, who Rory worked with for a couple of years, Kenyon has an amazing record. He's a very, very technical coach. He has an amazing record most recently with Max Homa, who was a bang average putter, and Homa's now a very, very good putter, and his rise in the rankings, his success on the PGA Tour is you can specifically correlate it with the day that he hired Kenyon as a putting coach. I'm not saying that any of these guys are better than any of the other ones,
sure,
but I'm just saying the rhythm of Rory's, it might be time for him to look at something different.
Golf doesn't give many people everything. And so Rory is not the first and won't be the last great ball striker who hates the greens on his bad days. Scotty Scheffler jumps to mind, who, is hitting the ball, as we remarked last week, as well as anybody on the planet ever has, and can't buy a putt at the moment. And that's soul destroying. In his case, he managed to pick up the Masters last year. And so that gives you a certain kind of, I can endure the tough days. And McIlroy said after LACC that he'd go through 100 more Sundays like that to get another major. But it must be doing something to like his soul, without getting too grandiose about it, in that this week it's Harman. At LACC it's Wyndham Clark. It's always somebody having the week of their lives. And if, Cam Smith last year at St Andrews, shooting a 64, couldn't miss a putt. Of the last 8 majors, so the last 2 years of majors, aside from missing the cut at Augusta, Rory's been in the top 10 every time, and a bunch of top 5s. You wonder if he's encouraged by that, or because he certainly is talking a good game, or you wonder if he has this nagging sense that, my God, this is my window, this is it, and there's just always something on the big days, and it will take real kind of steel to keep coming back.
He'll say that he doesn't, but I absolutely guarantee that he does. It must be playing on him psychologically. But you are right. Traditionally, what you would say at this point as well, you got to keep on putting yourself in the position. But this is what he's, as you say, his record is just incredible. It's Nicklaus obviously won a lot, but Nicklaus, I think, was second in majors 19, 20 times.
Yeah.
Rory's at that kind of level. He just can't seem to kind of cross the line. The one thing I would say, Joe, I think he's a more complete golfer now than he's ever been. I think years and years ago, when Rory turned pro in 2007, he was stunning, really great amateur record. Won the Irish Close, won the European Amateur, was a brilliant, played in the Walker Cup, was a brilliant, a star from the shot 61 at Royal Portrush, the course record, and was a star. And I said to a very, very grand person in the world of GB&I, as we call it, amateur golf. How's McIlroy going to do as a pro? And the guy said, I won't name him because he said, he's not going to do that great. He doesn't putt well enough. So maybe this has always just been who Rory is. Maybe that's, and this is it in terms of who is he as a golfer. But as I say, if you put the putting to one side, I think now he's always been a great driver of the golf ball, but he's better now than he ever was. He hits it straighter, he hits it further. He's a magnificent iron player. Always has been a flusher. Darren Clark, who considers himself to be one of the greatest ball strikers of all time, a lot of people do. He was one person who conceded that Rory was a match to him in terms of ball striking. So Rory is a generational ball striker. His short game is fantastic.
Yeah, great.
The stats say that. It's just this one thing, Joe. He really has to tackle it. Of course, one of the things about Rory is he won't be told. He's pretty headstrong, and it served him well. But that's why he gave up with Pete Cowan. Pete Cowan came in, and he lasted about 6 months because Pete's got a pretty forthright guy, and Rory wasn't having any of that. And you just wonder, will he have the I don't know what's the word, the self-awareness to go and get somebody different who might help with his putting. What I did notice yesterday, quickly, Joe, is that he called in Harry Diamond a few times to read putts on Sunday, and he putted pretty decently on Sunday. So maybe it's time for it's Harry's time to shine.
Yeah.
Those of us who defend Harry, have been defending Harry for years, would love to see that. Because Harry's a really brilliant player in his own right. I mean, obviously not a Rory class. But something has to happen. That's the long and short of it.
Yeah, well, the boy wonder is suddenly 35 next year, so it's such an interesting juncture at his career.